Hi, I'm Amanda Giles, and we're here at Corning Community College, where we're talking about education and politics. I am here with Ryan Hersha, a teacher here at Corning Community College, and Mayor Negri. Thank you for joining us. So, we have a few questions here for both of you, mainly about education and what's your party's view, and mainly, more importantly, what exactly your view and it is on our questions. Okay?
Sure.
Great.
Okay. Shall we get started?
Absolutely.
All right. Now, America is ranked 17th in reading, 31st in mathematics, and 23rd in science. Is there any way that you can see, on your opinion, as improving it or anything? Ryan?
Thank you for having us. I also want to thank the mayor for visiting the college. I teach English here at Corning Community College, and I think it's a wonderful thing when we have our public officials come and visit and make personal contact with the students. That shows a commitment, I think, to education and to our young people. So I appreciate that. But to your question more broadly, we have a host of things that we can work on in this country in terms of education. I agree that we're underperforming overall. Too many of our children and young people, as well as people returning, people that would like to continue their education, are not having the access to quality education that they deserve. We see that we have peer countries, advanced industrialized countries elsewhere that are doing a lot better. Some of the things, and I don't mean to go over every little reform that might be made, that they do is they, number one, they focus on students. They make sure that everyone has equal access. So, for example, in Finland, which is often regarded as one of the highest performing countries, students are generally across the country have equal access to the same quality education. Funding is equal across the board. Here in the United States, we have a patchwork of funding mechanisms and means by which schools are funded. Also, in Finland and in other countries, teachers are treated with a much higher level of respect. They have much more autonomy. They are trusted to do all that they can for the students. We have many amazing teachers in this country, and yet I think that educational outcomes are undermined, and students are actually undermined if the teachers aren't entrusted fully with the power to do everything they can for the students. Those are very important. And then lastly, I would say this applies K through 12 and through college. We need to focus on properly funding education in this country.
Okay. I'm going to cut you off while you actually finish perfectly on time. And is there anything that you would agree with it, disagree, your opposing views, or?
Well, first of all, I feel like I'm at a disadvantage. I graduated from the University of Cincinnati so many years ago. Most of you weren't even born yet. So my perspective of education is a little different. What I see, especially in K through 12, but even probably at this level, is a lack of control by teachers in the classroom. That's one thing. I think discipline, especially the K through 12 level, isn't there. And so you have students running the asylum, if you don't mind my putting it that way. The other thing is that the education system is not dependent on money, I don't think. It's dependent on, we seem to be dumbing down the student population by not demanding higher performance before you get a passing grade. In other words, if we demanded that you meet certain criteria in order to pass, instead of allowing some students to keep going through the system without meeting those criteria. I think that's what the problem is, and I think that's why so many areas in math, science in particular, our students are falling behind. They're not put up to, we're not demanding that they meet the criteria. So we're allowing them to get through the system without performing.
I understand. You want them to get up to a certain level before they achieve without instead of just going through.
Absolutely.
Okay. And now America's youth is seeking more education in this time than ever before. Do you feel social media is affecting that at all, or is it making it worse or better?
I don't think there's an effect by social media, meaning, I assume, Facebook, etc. I think the internet in general is contributing to people and kids and wanting to get a higher education or more education. The ability to go online and look up all kinds of information, I think, is fantastic to not only spur the enthusiasm but the imagination of the students who are interested in learning more. I think the internet is phenomenal. I don't think the social media, as you put it, really does much to further that.
And any opposing views that you may have with that, or agrees or disagrees?
Not at all. I would agree with that completely. I think that the schools do have a responsibility, and many are doing a very good job of this, of helping students not just to know how to access it and maybe even find some information quickly on the internet, but to actually engage with social media and with the internet in a critical way, in an empowered way, so that they can be intelligent consumers of the information that they're receiving, and use social media for maybe more than what we typically think of it as, inane status updates and whatnot. You can use social media to make a difference in the world, to actually change your community, to bring people together around a cause. And so I agree that it can be a positive. But again, teachers and schools need support for that. So when I talk about the importance of investment in education, that applies to investments in technology, also to professional support for teachers who want to be able to prepare students for the 21st century in those ways. And lastly, just to return to the comment about classroom management, which is a concern for many teachers in many environments and even into college, I would say that funding actually does relate to that, because funding directly impacts class size. If you have larger classes, it's much more difficult to manage a classroom. If you have a smaller class, not only can you manage that classroom so it's a more peaceful environment, but you can develop stronger relationships and provide more meaningful feedback. So I would agree that that's important, as well as standards, but funding and class size impact on that.
Just as a follow-up, I think also performance of the teachers is important in this area. When you're talking about student achievement, and again, not being in school, and it's been a long time since I've been there, I can only go by what I read and hear on the news networks, that many teachers are, because of the unions, I guess, is they're not, we don't have enough evaluation, again, especially in K through 12, where you really form the students' minds. And I think the ability to evaluate teachers and promote and increase their salary of those that are really performing well, and demoting or getting rid of, if you will, the ones that are not performing. We don't do that very well in this country.
Okay. Well, let's just take a swing on it to the election. Now, how important do you think the youth vote will be in this election? How much do you think it'll affect it, defect it, anything that you'd feel on it?
Sure, thank you. I think that's an important question. Oftentimes, the youth vote is denigrated. They say, pundits or so-called experts will say, well, young people won't vote. You can't count on them to come out and vote, so you really shouldn't pay attention to that. I'm saying they might say that to candidates. And it's true that if you look at the voting rolls in any given election, the younger you are, the less likely you are, unfortunately, to actually be a voter. But I think that there are reasons for that, and one of the reasons is because public officials, as well as parents and other people in the community, have chosen not to engage and challenge young people in the political process. So I've seen firsthand that young people actually can make a big difference in campaigns. Not only can they make a big difference in terms of volunteering or voting in an election, they can make a difference as candidates. Nate Shinagawa, who's running for Congress in this district right now, he ran when he was very young in Ithaca. He's still very young, but he really knows his stuff. He's now a seasoned public official, and he's one of many across the country that are making a difference. So I would encourage young people, as they're thinking about elections and they think it doesn't have anything to do with them, in fact, that what happens on November 6th and in even local elections after that have a direct impact on their lives, and they don't have to simply think that it has nothing to do with them. They can take real steps to make a difference in the elections.
Okay. And is there any opposing sides or agrees, disagrees that you would have with his opinion?
No, I pretty much agree. I think the message I would leave you with as far as the youth vote is, first of all, I encourage our young and the people in college to learn more about the candidates and try not to engage your emotions as much as your intellect. It's easy to be emotional about candidates. And I think what you miss there is what they're really all about. I think you need to look at each candidate and their position on various issues and compare your position with the candidates. And I don't think we do that enough. There's a lot of emotion in voting for somebody. Sometimes it's just because he's in that party. And I would like to think that the youth of America today get away from party affiliation more and think more about that candidate. What does he stand for, or she? How do I relate to those positions? And then match your beliefs with the candidates, and then go for the one that you can identify more with.
So you feel that it should be less party-driven than whether or not you actually agree with that person's standpoint and their beliefs?
Absolutely.
Okay. And what do you think the federal government should be involved in education? Should it, should not? Should it just be on the states or the school districts itself, or no?
I personally think that the more you can put down to the lower levels, the better. In other words, as far as education is concerned, I think the states can handle it. I don't think the federal government needs a bureaucracy to manage the educational system in the country. I think each state has enough capability to do that. And I even think from the states, I think there should be a Board of Education at state level, but I think as much of the responsibility that they could even move to the level of the counties and cities, I think is better. The closer you get to the problem, the better it is to solve that problem. The further away you are, the more difficult. And the other problem is, from my point of view as being in city government, is you come into city government with a knowledge of your community, and it's amazing how much lack of power you have to do anything about it, because the states mandate so many things. They come up with a law. It's very easy for them to say, gee, I think we ought to do this, but we're not going to pay for it. We're going to ask the cities to pay for it. In fact, we're not even going to ask them. We're going to tell them. Okay. So, we get this thrown down to us from the state level, and we have to fund it.
Okay. I'm sorry we have to cut you off a bit. We have a minute
It's an emotional
left.
issue. Don't be emotional.
I just want you to get your quick answer in before we have to cut to commercial.
I think there's a lot to respond to there. I would say it is good to think through the issues and know the differences on the candidates. I actually think this was framed as a somewhat conservative versus progressive, or Democrat versus Republican conversation. I would say that Democrats will win that every time, especially with young people. That Democrats and progressives are people that tend to be more supportive of funding education at higher levels. They tend to support making higher education more affordable. It's obviously Democrats that supported things like the Health Care Act, the Affordable Health Care Act, which helped young people stay on their parents' health care longer through college years. If young people do think about what's in their interest, I think they will tend to support Democrats. But that said, I also would encourage young people to feel the issues deeply, because these issues will impact them tremendously.
Okay, we're going to have to cut you off right there. We have about 5 seconds left, and we will be back. We're just going to go ahead to commercial, and we'll see you in a few. Thank you. And we're back, and we're here to continue on our talk about education. How do you feel that would be creating better for more affordable higher education for low-income students? Do you feel that would be do you feel like a good idea for it or no?
Absolutely, I think it's a good idea. I think affordable education for low-income students as well as any income students is a good idea. I look at that as being able to borrow money at low interest rates. I think I'm 100% behind that. However, at the other side of the coin, like I started this discussion today about feeling at a disadvantage because I graduated college a long time ago. And I wanted to be a doctor. And I couldn't because I didn't have the money. And my parents didn't have the money. In fact, I couldn't go to college at all because I didn't have the money. But I ended up going to college because I found a university that had what they call a co-op program, where you work so long and then you go to school for 7 weeks, you work 8, go to school for 7, work 8, and those 8 weeks made enough money for the next 7 weeks. So I'm saying to the students, I know it's good that you borrow money, but don't let that stop you. There's always a way to get an education if you're determined enough.
When there's a will, there's a way.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
I agree that it's a major issue in this election. I believe that a higher education is, for many people, and I would say for Americans in general, it's a gateway to joining the middle class, to staying in the middle class. And unfortunately, what we're seeing today is that many students are being discouraged from pursuing education at the levels that they would because they simply can't afford it. Unmet need, even with loans, is growing more and more. And so it's becoming a burden and it's becoming a detriment, a deterrent, I should say, to pursuing higher education. I think what we should focus on in terms of public policy is making college more affordable. That involves, I should say, enhanced financial aid, not just loans, but grants. Yes, if you're committed to pursuing your education regardless of the cost, you can do that and be burdened with unthinkable debt for a long time. And I don't think that that's a just way to invite people to pursue their full possibilities. I think that we should make college affordable in a more direct way. We should also do something about the situation where we have so many people in this country with mountains of debt, which actually prevent them from not only pursuing more education right now, but from pursuing other activities that they could do, including economic activity. I think it's actually a real anchor on the economy. The other thing I would say is we're here at a community college. Community college is, for at least 2 years, a real powerful option for people that wish to save money. It's also another gateway to increased ability to earn a living, especially through trades and through certificate programs, other kinds of training that are offered at the community college. I think that as a public policy, and I should say President Obama has made this a priority, we need to invest in community colleges.
Okay. And now we're just going to go on to our next segment, which you both have brought in your own standpoints on something else that we need to talk about besides education that's very much important. And Rich, would you like to start?
Well, I guess one of the concerns I have is our tax system. We have a ridiculously voluminous set of books on taxes when it could be simplified. I'm not here to promote whether it be a universal tax, sales tax, or a simple tax form as some. I almost don't care what system you use, but simplify it. Right now, it's burdensome, and I made a suggestion to Senator Gillibrand when she was in town. I suggested that we can solve that tax problem if she would pass a resolution so that every member of the Senate and every member of Congress or the House would just one time do their own taxes. And I think if that happened, they'd realize how difficult it is, because I can bet you right now not one of them do their own taxes. But if they did, they'd realize how complicated it really is. And you got to start and simplify it. It's just too burdensome.
Anything you'd like to say for that?
So you're asking about a public policy in general that I'd like to see Congress look at in the next term?
Well, it's basically just what he brought into the table. It's just if you agree or disagree or...
Well, I agree that we do need tax reform. Unfortunately, one of the major issues that I think we're facing with our tax system is that it's fundamentally unjust, where you have people that earn the highest amount of money who never have to work, and many of them have never had to work in their lives, pay a lower tax rate on their income than people who sweep the floors at this college, people that teach, people that work hard for a living, then even the students at this college, than almost anybody else. And then we wonder why we have huge debts and deficits in this country. It's because we're not taxing the people fairly. Now, there is a connection of that issue to education. Coming up in January, and Mayor Negri and I talked about this over the break, about gridlock and partisan disagreements, if Congress can't come to a resolution on the budget questions upcoming, we're going to go off what's called the fiscal cliff. There's going to be this thing called sequestration. If sequestration happens, there's going to be across-the-board cuts to what's called domestic discretionary spending, which is going to have incredibly negative effects for education. It's incumbent upon our leaders to understand the incredibly horrible effects that would have for people in their districts, including on the issue of education. The major stumbling block on the Republican side is that the Republicans in the House of Representatives absolutely refuse to raise taxes 1 penny on the wealthiest Americans in this country, even though they are right now paying less of a share of their income than the rest of Americans. I think that our public officials should be able to come to a solution on that so that we can properly fund the services in this country while also having the tax reform that we need.
Okay. And you also brought in your own specific idea that you would like to talk about too, or?
Can I follow up on what he just said?
I'd welcome him to.
Go for it.
Finally, I disagree with you 100%. I do believe that we have the what you call the wealthy paying. You say paying less than the average American. I don't believe that at all. First of all, if you make $1 million a year, what's 10% of that? 100,000. If you make $1,000 a year, what's 10% of that? $10 or $100.
Okay, well, I mean,
the point is,
sure.
Most of the money paid to the government is from the top, 2% of the country? The rest aren't paying even that amount. So to say that they're not paying their fair share, I think is a misnomer. I think even if you doubled what they paid, you're not going to solve the national debt. So it's a red herring, if you will. It's not going to solve the problem. We've got a debt that is unmanageable at this point. And to say if we raise taxes on the wealthy, we would be able to reduce the debt, ain't going to happen.
If I could respond to that and then we get to my policy suggestion. We've seen historically in this country that this country has thrived. The middle class has grown at times, and it wasn't a result of extremely low taxes on the wealthiest Americans. It was actually at a time when corporations and the wealthy paid a higher percentage of their taxes. The reason the wealthy and corporations, but especially the wealthy, are able to pay higher percentage in their taxes is because they simply have more discretionary income. My students and most middle class people, when they are earning a paycheck, no matter what that is, almost every penny that they earn goes into things that they absolutely need: their rent, the milk, their children's education, health care, things like that. Once you get to a certain level of income, you have much more discretion over how you spend that extra money. And so it simply doesn't make economic sense for us to be taxing middle-class people and poor people at rates that are higher than wealthy people. I would also say, going historically to, and this is to answer your question,
better catch on your quick thing. We have about 5 minutes left.
Okay, well, real quickly, responding earlier, but this relates to my policy proposal. Mayor Negri said that one major problem with our educational system was that we were not holding teachers to the standards that we need to, and students to the standards that we need to. And he connected that to labor unions, that labor unions were somehow complicit with low standards. What we see in this country is that states that actually have strong teacher labor unions, their students outperform the students in the states with the low union membership. We also see that, I mentioned Finland before. Finland has a very strong teachers union. And this is true of countries generally that have strong teachers unions. Teachers unions are not the enemy of education. Teachers unions support teacher autonomy. They support respecting teachers and treating teachers like professionals. Those things are in agreement with student success. Okay. And I think that on a national level, we should be supporting people's right to organize and to have autonomy in the classroom.
Okay. And now we're just about to wrap it up. Any closing statements you guys would like to say?
Sure. I want to say that the mayor and I obviously have some disagreements. We also agree on some important things. One of the things that I agree on passionately is that we need to invite more people into the political process and really help people take the next step in terms of their engagement. For me, it's not enough to simply complain about what's wrong and to simply reject politics as corrupt, because there is corruption, but to actually engage with the issues of the day, because you can make a difference. And so I want to thank you for having us here today, and I'm hoping that we can engage the students here and elsewhere in the political process more.
Okay. And then
can I close?
Go for it.
Well, again, thank you for having us here, and let me speak from a city government point of view. As far as, let me tell you difficulties I have. We have boards, commissions, committees, and we have a city council. Getting people to volunteer to run for city council, to be on a board, commission, or committee is very difficult. I would love it if some of our young people would step up and volunteer for some of those boards, commissions, or committees, or volunteer to run for city council. It's a good first step to get involved in local politics, and if you've got aspirations to go further, that's fine. I don't care, but we sure need your help at the local level.
Well said.
Okay, we still got about a minute left. And so basically, you just want to say that you want people to get more involved in
our local government.
Local government. You want them to start applying to register to vote. You want them to know about their candidates, figure out who you vote for, not just the party, but their exact beliefs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Compare your own beliefs with those that are running, and where you match up, go for it. I'm a Republican, but I voted for Jimmy Carter. I voted for John F. Kennedy. Those are Democrats, because it makes no difference to me what party you're in. If I agree with your platform, I'm going for you.
And
you want to basically just go for the teachers' unions to make sure that they're.
I certainly do support teachers union. I'm a proud member of my own union, but no, I would, in agreement with the mayor's comments. I've seen firsthand that if a person, whether they be any age, if they want to learn about their community, if they want to learn about the issues, there's really no better way than engaging directly. Oftentimes people assume that doors are closed, that something is inaccessible, and all you have to do is make a call and say, hey, how can I help out? How can I learn?
Okay, I'm going to have to cut you off. We got about 5 seconds left. I thank you both for being here, and thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.